So it all started on the. So I'm 21 in my room, and it feels like I'm about to make the decision of my life. It's about choosing between doing what everyone else expect from me or prioritizing my values. I was sick of faking happiness at parties, just trying to fit in, doing what everyone else my age is doing, in hopes that it will make me one of them. Spoiler alert, life doesn't work that way and it just makes things worse. That night, the choice was simple and yet tough. It was either to go out with friends for the last day of the year or stay, hit the bed early, and go to the gym next morning. And I chose not to go out. I agreed to paying the price of not doing what everyone else was doing, which is a deep sense of isolation, really. And if this seems like a childish teenager dilemma, well, it was kinda, but in reality, it was very important for me. Because by staying home that night, I realized something big. If I was ready to pay the price of loneliness, I could be the person that I wanted to be. And I chose to prioritize my values over my social environment and the pressure to conform. In addition, I made a promise to myself that day to always put my goals first and stop trying to fit into the box. And looking back on the situation, that was a year ago. At the time, I didn't see it, but this was the first step towards a different life, a better life. In itself, the choice seemed minimal, but as the time went on, it opened up a world of possibilities that weren't visible before. And a year later to the day, here are the 5 most important lessons that I've learned from that decision. First of all, don't think you can negotiate your values. Looking back, the one thing that I would tell my past self is that negotiating my values for social approval isn't a viable option at all. Whatever or whoever's asking you to make a slight change in your values isn't worth changing for. What I didn't know back then is that friendship is supposed to be way more than just going out on Friday night drinking and remembering the good old times. Your values are what build your identity and your sense of self. Acting against them deliberately means you might not recognize yourself anymore. That's why negotiating your values shouldn't be a choice. It's the last thing you want to do, really. Going against it will eventually lead to decisions that you will regret 20 years down the line. From my experience, I've never been much of a party animal. To be honest, I've always found myself observing people rather than just enjoying the party. And if someone had told me that I didn't have to do it, I would have stopped going to parties a long time ago. The second lesson is that you have no clue what's going to happen. Making a decision that seems to have no immediate positive outcomes can sometimes be the best move you can make. And in that moment, staying home alone felt like the worst decision of my life. But if I truly was to listen to my instincts, then it was the right move. And I chose the long term over the short term distraction, even without any immediate reward. And this decision started me on the path of building serious delayed gratification. And choice is a powerful tool. The only problem is that you can try to predict what could happen. The reality is that you have to make decisions in the moment with the information that you have. Finally, your life is the way it is because of all the choices that you've made. Even the smallest ones from years ago can have a significant impact if you look at it on an extended time frame. Your brain never forgets anything really, meaning you can't lie to yourself. What you see, your brain registers, and acting as your discontinuous identity will only lead to feeling disconnected. Aligning with your actions on a daily basis is crucial. After all, you're the only person that you have to live with every day. Your values and your goals, and you can work towards them daily, but this requires acting in your best interest in every situation. Don't be mistaken, because that applies to the smallest decisions also. They lay the foundations of your default mode of thinking. You have to remember that how you do anything is how you do everything. So when you're making decisions, be mindful that a year later, your brain will recall what you chose to do. And if it doesn't seem like a good idea now, just don't do it. The principle is simple but yet powerful. More frequent reminders could help people avoid making bad decisions because they instinctively know that these are mistakes. On the other hand, mistakes are a very important part of the journey, and you learn more through correcting your mistakes than by doing anything else, really. But by definition, you're making a mistake when you're not aware that you're making one. And if you think it's a bad idea from the beginning but proceed anyway, then you have a bigger problem than just making mistakes. What's going to be important is that you ask yourself why you're still doing it. Because at the end of the day, we still are animals, really, and we have instincts that serve us well. For instance, I couldn't quite pinpoint it, but in my story, my brain was signaling me on that night that I was making a significant decision. So if you're facing a hard decision to make and you find yourself uncertain, well, try isolating you in a dark, quiet room, and hopefully you'll come up with some sort of inner conversation that you have, and usually that's the best way to find a solution to your problems. But remember that it's never about perfection, rather it's the role of our instincts and emotions that are designed to help us make quicker decisions based on the information that we currently have. When you dissect it, your instincts, they come from an inaccessible part of you that's subconscious, and it's something that you fear rather than articulate. And reflecting on your instincts might sometimes sound like discussing some sort of magic, but I'm no Harry Potter, and will simply use instincts for what they are, which are signals that emerge to the conscious because your deeper mind wants to communicate to you something very important. And if you want to know what it is, you have to listen to it. Have a little idea of what the right decision looks like. Of course, you'll never be 100% sure, and again, it's not about the perfect decisions. But in my case, I knew what was probably the right move after I had the hard conversation with myself. Still, after having made a decision, you have to stick to it and pay the price of the alternative. And for me, that was the feeling of isolation. It was the result of my conscious decision, also called the price to pay, to be truly honest with yourself. The right choice is the one you feel is the right one, and you can only regret when you know you haven't made the right decision. You cannot miss something that you don't know exists. So at the end of the day, even if you make the wrong choice, you can, one, choose not to do that again because you've learned, and two, try to repair what's been broken. The only thing that would prevent you from doing so is time. And if you don't take actions and let time brush off your bad decisions, you'll end up having to pay the price forever, because you will be aware of the fact that you could have changed the course of your life and yet you didn't. So it's better to just ask yourself who you are, what your values are, and who do you want to be. I truly think that all the answers can be found in that quest. So take care of yourself. No pressure. You'll find me here if you need it. And in the meantime, just trust the process.